Today I'm in Oregon's Columbia River Gorge. It's early fall and it's the best time of year to witness the migration of salmon back up the Columbia River to their natal streams, the streams where they were born, where they will spawn, lay their eggs, and die. It's an amazing thing to witness, but it's also a great opportunity to photograph birds and other wildlife that are attracted to this event. And today I'm especially looking for American dippers. Hey everybody, good morning. I've just made my way out to this small river here to see the salmon migration and hopefully to photograph some dippers. I've just walked up a nice stretch of stream here and actually seen quite a number of dippers, more than you would normally expect to see along a stretch of river. Dippers are pretty territorial during the breeding season and most of the year and kind of maintain stretches of rivers as their territories, and they're a little bit few and far between. But this event, the spawning of the salmon, has created a situation where they're a little bit concentrated. They've come downriver from higher in the mountains, and there's actually, I've seen at least 6 dippers right in this area where I've been walking. So that was my goal today. Oops, there's a spotted sandpiper. Awesome. So that was my goal today, to hope that there was a good number of dippers here and to do some dipper photography. It's really distracting with all the beautiful salmon and the salmon activity, but I'm going to try to focus on the dippers and see what I can do here. This is perfect dipper habitat. They like these fast-moving, clear, unpolluted mountain streams with a lot of cascades and riffles and small rapids, and lots of rocks and cobbles where aquatic invertebrates live, and that's what the dipper is specialized to feed on. So I've walked a good stretch of river here, and my goal here is really to identify areas where dipper activity is concentrated. And I found this little riffle here. It's kind of a little waterfall, a little natural dam in the river with a lot of little chutes and cascades. And as I approached it, 3 dippers were feeding there. So I think this is probably a good area of concentrated feeding activity. And rather than walking up and down stream, clambering around slippery rocks, and then trying to stalk and get low and into position, what I want to do is just sit in one spot where I think there'll be a lot of behavior. And if there's no birds there for a while, I'll just sit and wait. But I think hopefully this will be a good spot. If not, I'll go look for another spot and sit there. Another great thing about this riffle and about these mountain streams is you can really use the gradient to the river to your advantage. And because I've got this elevated waterfall here, I can get in a spot where I'm pretty much at eye level, but I am sitting, in a comfortable position and not laying down. So I'm going to try to work my way to the other side of this little dam and get into a little position there and just wait and hope some dippers come back to forage in this spot. It looks like a great spot, so that's the plan. So I'm trying to get away from this loud water here a little bit if I can. This spot is perfect. I'm positioned in an area where I'm perfectly eye level with this little waterfall area, and kind of on the top of it in the riffles and the boulders is where a bunch of birds are foraging. So I'm pretty much at eye level, and it's really neat to watch all the different foraging behaviors that these birds use. For the most part, they're wading around, swimming around, gleaning things off of the rocks, probably very small invertebrates of some type. And then also they're doing plunge diving, where they'll, if they've been peering underwater and they spot something, they'll actually just dive into the water. They propel themselves underwater with their wings. And I've seen them go down several times and do that and bring up some salmon eggs, which is really neat. So it's a mix of different behaviors they use while they're foraging amongst these rocks and riffles to harvest these aquatic invertebrates. Oh, here, I've got this guy right here. This bird is actually pulling up leaf litter and flipping it over. Invertebrates during the day will often hide under leaf litter, under the underside of rocks. They come out at night to feed. So this bird is actually flipping over leaves, looking on the underside of them, and picking off some of these little tiny, I don't know what they are, look like little flatworms or something, off the bottom of this leaf. Wow, this was really cool. I just had a dipper pop up with a caddisfly in its case, caddisfly larva. They build this case around their bodies to protect themselves, to camouflage themselves. They'll use whatever substrate, little things they find on the bottom of the river. And the dipper grabbed it, came up onto a rock, and just repeatedly was beating it until it had subdued it and broken it free of its shell that it's created. So that's a really neat little piece of behavior and something that dippers frequently do. Well, this has been pretty great here so far this morning. I've been looking for a good spot for dippers for a long time, and this event with the salmon being here has really made this spot pretty special with just how many dippers there are here. Normally you might try to shoot dippers in the breeding season when there's only one pair on a long stretch of river, and the opportunities may be few and far between. So having this predictable spot is the kind of thing I look for when I really want to work on something and make really good use of my time. At least 4 or 5 different birds came in and fed here. They're in various states of just completing their annual molt for the adults, and it looks like probably some juveniles who have just undergone their first molt out of juvenile plumage. But you can see all these white fringes on their fresh feathers, and they just look fresh and beautiful all over. And they're puffy little birds. Dippers spend their lives in cold environments for the most part. They are spending a lot of time in this icy cold water. So they have very dense insulated plumage, and you can tell that looking at them. They're very puffy little guys. And they have some other specializations too. They have a very low metabolic rate, and they actually have blood that can carry more oxygen than other kind of comparable songbirds like this. So they're adapted for these cold water environments, and it's really cool to see them up preening their feathers, maintaining their feathers, and maintaining those wing feathers that they actually use underwater, which is pretty amazing. So I can literally see 6 dippers here right now, but I've got one little guy actually perched really close right here, and he's returned several times to this spot and is singing. So this could be the territory holder that normally protects this area of the river, and there are some chases going on, but in general it's kind of a, you know, you could be here but don't get too comfortable kind of thing, probably, for the territorial pair that maintains their territory on this stretch of the river. But there are so many birds here. I've never actually seen so many dippers in one place. I mean, there just comes 2 more just came flying up the river. Really pretty incredible density. And you know, this is another example of taking advantage of the seasonal calendar. I even keep a calendar of seasonal events that I know happen throughout the year in case I forget, so I could be reminded some weekend, you know, this is probably going on right now and I may want to go work on it. So salmon migration attracts other animals. So, you know, I had a spotted sandpiper flying around here too, and that could also provide some good opportunities. So keying in on these kind of events can be really productive at times. So I thought I'd throw in a few photographic notes here. Obviously, light is a challenge. I started very early. I'm in a canyon, heavily wooded, and if the sun was out, I really don't want to. Actually, the sun is coming out, which is kind of might shut me down here. But it looks like there's some clouds coming. I want it to be either overcast or early morning because I don't want sun. The bright water and the black rocks and the sun would just create way too much contrast and too busy of a scene. So definitely want overcast or early morning light or shaded light for these birds in this habitat. And that's what I've had most of the morning. But of course, because of that, you don't have a lot of light to shoot. So I, in this situation, have been bouncing around quite a bit with my ISO and shutter speeds, depending on exactly what I'm shooting at the moment. When I've been trying to really focus more on action, or if you know, the bird caught a caddisfly, I cranked my ISO up as quick as I could and shot some stuff that way. And then a lot of the time, if a bird was moving more slowly, I used less ISO, but I knew that a lot of my images would be blurry, but that I'd get those few peppered through that were sharp, but not noisy. So when I throw on some of my settings on the shots, you will see in some cases I may have a portrait where I've shot it at ISO 2500 just because that's what I was in at the moment and I had a good opportunity. Or vice versa, I may have an action shot with a pretty slow shutter speed just because it was in that moment when they were partially still. So you can't really just kind of bank on having the right shutter speed, right ISO set all the time. So it just depends on what image you're after in the moment. For the most part, I'm shooting more close to wide open when the birds are kind of medium distance away from me. As you get closer to plump little birds like this, they're quite stout. When you get, a half frame of a frame, that's when I'll start stopping down a bit to try to get their at least their front shoulder and their head completely in focus. And if I can get that whole wing in focus too, without making the background too busy, I will definitely do that. I did have a couple of opportunities for kind of really clean portraits where a bird was kind of preening on a rock, singing on a rock, and for that, I actually got in the river and got into the right position to get that shot. So when I'm shooting something like this, I've got waders on. That's both for being able to walk in the river and get into angles that I like. Also, if I needed to lay down in the river, it's just more handy for that. If I'm going to spend the time out here doing this, I want to be able to get the angles, the backgrounds that I want, and sometimes that involves getting in the water. So done that a couple of times when birds have been perched on kind of more isolated rocks. And then otherwise, I'm shooting a lot of frames when they're foraging amongst the rocks and in the riffles. And not all of the framings are going to be great. Not all of the surroundings are going to be great, but you'll find those ones you really like when you go back through your images afterwards. This is a dynamic environment where the birds are moving through all of these different little backgrounds. So it's hard to control. It's not a situation where you're trying to get clean images of the bird on with a smooth background. It's more getting them in context with their environment and having that environment look pleasing in your images. So in that regard, I take a lot of shots and spend a lot of time. I'm not just going to get a few shots here and there and go home. I'm going to probably stay here for at least a half or more of the day, depending on the light. Shoot lots of images, and then I'll just have a few favorites in the end. Another little note on backgrounds, when you have moving water, rushing water, the background can change quite rapidly. You might have splashes of water or reflections, and even when you're shooting an isolated bird on a perch, that background can be changing from green to whitish to bluish, depending on the riffles of the water. So generally I'll take a number of different frames as this water is moving in the background and the background is changing. And as you're flipping through your images, you'll find the ones that you like better than other ones. I'm not a huge fan of this dark reflected green that I'm getting in some of these images in this situation right here. But some of the backgrounds have been pretty nice. So we'll see. I am making notes for a future visit, and in another month, when all of these trees turn yellow and there's big yellow big leaf maple leaves in the stream, it could be another spectacular opportunity to come down here and shoot these again. So I may be back. Yeah, so lens-wise, I've got my 600mm lens. I pretty much have the 1.4 on it the whole time. I have been shooting video, as you have noticed, I'm sure. And I did throw a video tripod in my car and grabbed that and shot some video with the video tripod so I could follow the birds a little bit better while they're foraging. So I'm going to wait for some clouds to come, hopefully do some more shooting here. And I think I'll leave it at that and just show some images and some more video of these beautiful little dippers going about their lives here in this stream. So take care. Thanks again. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.